All right, welcome in, everyone. We're ready to dive deep today
Yeah, really deep.
into a story that's, well, it's powerful and honestly often gets overlooked. It's the history of Black Americans in the U.S. military.
Right. And, the material you've gathered, it really lays out just how important this part of our history is,
It does.
for the country.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we're aiming for today, right? To get to the core of it, to understand those contributions, those huge contributions, and also, those persistent hurdles that Black service members have
Right.
faced.
And they have been persistent.
Yeah.
Over time, that's what I find so striking about the material you've shared.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, let's get into it.
Let's think of our mission today as unearthing these crucial narratives,
Hmm.
of courage, sacrifice, and incredible strength.
Right. The resilience.
Yeah, and seeing how those things, their commitment, shaped not just the battles they fought in,
Right.
but also the fight for civil rights here at home.
Right. Exactly. Because what we're going to see, and the sources detail this so well,
Yeah.
we're going to trace this history all the way from the Revolutionary War
Okay, wow.
up to the global war on terror.
Right, yeah.
And what's so powerful, what emerges, is this recurring theme.
Mhm.
Black Americans fighting for freedoms that were too often denied to them at home.
Consistently.
Consistently, yeah.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Okay, yeah.
Let's go back to those early chapters.
Yeah,
The Revolutionary War,
yeah, that's a great place to start.
leading into the Civil War. What really struck you about this foundational period?
It's funny. It's kind of what grabs you right away
Yeah.
is the sheer determination
Yeah.
of Black individuals during the Revolutionary War.
Okay.
You think about it, it seems like a glaring contradiction, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Fighting for liberty.
In a system built on slavery.
Exactly. In a society built on slavery.
Yeah.
And yet you have an estimated 5,000 Black men taking up arms.
Yeah.
Their motivations, though, I think they're multi-layered, right? I mean, there's a genuine belief in the ideals of the revolution, sure.
Yeah.
But there's also this very real hope for personal freedom.
Uh-huh.
So many of them saw military service as a direct path to emancipation,
Okay.
either through promises from enslavers
Interesting.
or the possibility of being granted freedom after the war.
Okay, so it wasn't just about a national cause.
No, this was personal.
Yeah, a personal fight.
It was, for so many, a deeply personal fight for their own self-determination.
Yeah, it's just sobering to consider they were risking everything for a nation that didn't fully recognize their humanity.
It's true.
And they were engaged in key moments.
Yeah.
Right? Battles like Bunker Hill and Yorktown
Right from the beginning.
saw significant Black participation.
Absolutely. And that's the thing. Their involvement wasn't, it wasn't peripheral. It was integral to the success of the revolution.
Yeah.
And yet,
And yet,
as we see in the historical record, this contribution was met with, well, discrimination,
of course.
a lack of recognition.
Yeah.
Often, you find them in segregated units relegated to these support roles
Mhm.
rather than being acknowledged for their combat service.
Yeah.
So there's this real disconnect.
And this dynamic continues into the War of 1812, right?
Yeah, you see this
And
continuing.
Black Americans serving on both sides.
Right.
Again, with that underlying pursuit of liberty or defense of their communities.
That's an important point, because it speaks to the complexity of the situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then we arrive at the Civil War, which truly, I think, is a turning point.
Okay.
Yeah, the Emancipation Proclamation.
Yeah.
Which, President Lincoln's declaration freeing enslaved people
Yeah.
in Confederate territories creates this opportunity
Yeah.
for widespread enlistment of Black soldiers. And that leads to the formation of the United States Colored Troops.
Or the USCT.
Right, the USCT, exactly.
Yeah.
And here, the narrative really shifts.
Yeah, this is where it changes.
Because the USCT were engaged in direct combat roles.
Yeah.
Significant victories, demonstrable acts of bravery on the battlefield.
Yeah, we're not talking about support roles anymore.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
And figures like Frederick Douglass, he was instrumental,
Yeah.
advocating tirelessly for the full inclusion of Black soldiers, while at the same time
Mhm.
exposing the prejudices that they still faced within the Union Army.
So even fighting for the Union, they were
Uh-huh.
still facing this.
They were still facing prejudice, yeah.
It's really, it highlights the resilience and commitment of Black Americans during this just pivotal moment in history.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary.
Okay, so as we move, through time into World War I,
Yeah.
we see this massive mobilization, again, even within the constraints of a segregated military.
Right. And the numbers are striking.
Nearly 400,000 black soldiers served.
Yeah, that's an enormous number.
That's huge.
It is.
So, and while the official policies largely confine them to segregated units,
Right.
often in non-combat roles,
Right. So there were still limitations.
their service was still vital,
Absolutely.
encompassing everything from logistical support
Yeah.
to, frontline duties in some instances.
Right. They were filling essential roles.
Yeah, and then there's the renowned 369th Infantry Regiment,
Oh, yeah. The Harlem Hellfighters.
famously known as the Harlem Hellfighters.
Yeah. Their story it's just extraordinary.
It really is.
What stands out about them is their exceptional combat record while serving alongside French forces.
Okay.
They spent an astounding 191 days in continuous combat,
Wow.
longer than any other American unit in the war.
Wow. And their bravery, was recognized by the French government.
It was. They were awarded the Croix de Guerre,
The Croix de Guerre, right?
which is a very prestigious, award for their bravery.
It's just this stark contrast, isn't it?
It is a really powerful contrast.
Hailed as heroes by the French,
Right.
yet facing inadequate resources and prejudice back home.
Yeah, from their own military.
Yeah.
It just underscores the deep contradictions of the era.
Yeah, really does.
Yeah.
Okay, so World War II.
Another major chapter.
Another major chapter. And again, we see this theme, this
Right.
fight against tyranny abroad, but also this struggle for equality at home.
Exactly. The two are intertwined.
Yeah. And despite the discrimination,
Still present. Yeah.
Black Americans volunteered for service in such significant numbers.
It's remarkable,
It really is.
given the context.
And we can't talk about World War II without talking about the Tuskegee Airmen.
Oh, absolutely. They're iconic.
They're iconic.
Such a powerful story of overcoming adversity
Yeah.
to demonstrate just unparalleled skill and courage as pilots.
Yeah. I mean, trained at the Tuskegee Institute in Alabama,
Right.
these aviators.
They had to fight on multiple fronts, didn't they?
They did.
Mastering the complexities of flight, aerial combat.
Yeah.
But also constantly battling that deeply ingrained racial prejudice.
Yeah, it's their exceptional performance.
It's incredible.
Escorting bombers, engaging enemy fighters. It wasn't just a testament to their military prowess.
Right.
It challenged and began to dismantle
Yes.
prevailing racist beliefs about capability.
Exactly. It chipped away at that foundation of prejudice.
Yeah, and yet they still had to deal with segregation and discrimination within their own ranks.
That's the bitter irony, isn't it?
It is.
That despite their achievements, they still face these barriers.
So bad, yeah.
But if you connect this to the broader sweep of history, their service in World War II becomes a catalyst for the civil rights movement.
A significant catalyst.
Because you have this powerful dissonance, right? Black veterans returning from fighting for democracy overseas.
Yeah. Only to be denied basic democratic rights in their own country.
It's that contradiction
Yeah.
that fuels this demand for change.
It fuels a powerful and increasingly vocal demand for change.
Absolutely. And, they had proven their loyalty,
They had, time and again.
their competence on the global stage.
Yes,
How could they then be relegated to second-class citizenship at home?
exactly. That question becomes unavoidable.
Yeah.
Their wartime experiences, I think, fostered a sense of disillusionment
Yeah, understand.
with the existing racial hierarchy.
Yeah.
And also a renewed determination to fight for the freedoms they had risked their lives to secure for others.
Yeah. So they came back, with this energy to fight for that equality at home.
Exactly. And that momentum fed directly into the civil rights movement
Yeah.
that gained traction in the post-war years.
Okay, so let's keep moving.
Okay.
Korean War, Vietnam War.
Yeah.
Again, we see this pattern
Right.
of courageous service.
Alongside these really deeply rooted struggles.
Right. The fight continues.
So what's notable about the Korean War, it's close to World War II, right?
It is, yeah.
And thousands of black soldiers served with distinction.
They did.
And we see kind of the initial steps toward integration within the military under President Truman.
Right. So there's progress,
Yeah.
but it's not a complete transformation.
Not by any means.
Because that deeply ingrained prejudice, it hadn't vanished.
Right. It manifested in different ways.
It did in interactions with peers, with superiors.
Yeah, yeah. And even within those newly integrated units,
Right.
there was still often a disparity in assignments, right?
Yeah, that's an important point.
The historical record shows that Black service members were still sometimes relegated to those menial tasks.
Right, or found themselves in de facto segregated roles.
Yeah, even within the integrated unit.
Even within, yeah.
Like the 761st Tank Battalion.
Right, a unit that fought so valiantly under extremely challenging conditions.
Yeah.
But still faced those internal divisions.
And figures like Lieutenant Colonel Charles D. Young.
Yeah, even going back to the early 20th century.
Yeah.
Long before Korea, he embodies this persistent fight
Yeah.
for recognition, for equitable treatment.
Within the military.
Within the military, yeah.
And then Vietnam.
Yet another complex chapter.
The statistics, I mean, they're striking, right?
They are.
Sources indicate that a disproportionately high percentage, around 30% of those in combat roles, were Black.
Yeah, and again, this juxtaposition of fighting for democratic ideals abroad while facing civil rights battles at home.
It's just so stark, isn't it?
It's so stark, yeah.
And individuals like Colonel Charles McGee,
Yeah.
who served with distinction in multiple wars,
Incredible career.
they stand as these symbols, these powerful symbols of that resilience, that commitment.
Right, to both their country.
To both their countries.
And the pursuit of justice.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
a dual commitment.
Yeah, okay, so that brings us to more recent times, right?
Yeah, to the present day.
The global war on terror.
Right.
And the sources highlight the pivotal role Black Americans have continued to play in these modern conflicts.
Absolutely. Their dedication, their bravery, their resilience, consistently demonstrated in Iraq and Afghanistan.
And what's really significant, I think, is their presence in leadership roles
It is.
across all branches of the military.
Yeah, across the board.
This reflects progress, but the journey toward true equality it's ongoing.
It is. It's an ongoing process.
Yeah, and the sources point out that issues like systemic racism and cultural biases, they still impact the experiences of Black service members even today.
That's crucial to acknowledge,
Yeah.
that despite the advancements, these challenges remain.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
the continued success, the upward mobility of Black service members, their growing representation in positions of authority, the accounts of valor, commendations received in operations like Afghanistan, these all underscore that commitment
Yeah.
and provide role models for future generations.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we take a step back
Yeah.
and look at this larger narrative,
The big picture.
the impact of this long history of military service
Yes.
on the broader civil rights movement.
That's undeniable.
It's huge, isn't it?
It is. It's profound.
Like we discussed with World War II, that contrast,
Right.
fighting for freedom overseas,
Yeah.
experiencing discrimination upon returning.
It was a jarring experience for so many.
Yeah, and that was a major catalyst.
A turning point for
Yeah.
the civil rights movement.
And these veterans, they
Yeah.
became these powerful voices.
They did.
Active participants in the fight for racial equality.
They were on the front lines again, but this time at home.
Yeah, challenging those discriminatory laws and practices.
Exactly. Putting their lives on the line once more.
Yeah, and this momentum, this carried through Korea, Vietnam, right?
Absolutely.
Veterans bringing their experiences,
Yeah.
their frustrations
Insight.
to the forefront of the struggle for social justice.
They had a unique perspective.
Yeah, and even the sources mention organizations like Black Veterans for Social Justice forming during this time.
Yeah, they were organizing, mobilizing, using their collective power.
And we can't forget, President Truman's Executive Order 9981 in 1948,
Oh, a landmark moment.
mandating integration of the armed forces.
A huge step.
A monumental step, not just for the military,
Right.
but for the broader civil rights landscape.
It set a precedent.
Yeah.
A powerful one.
Yeah.
It showed that desegregation was possible
Yeah.
in other areas of American life.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, let's talk about how this legacy is being honored and remembered today.
Yeah, that's
Through memorials, through forms of recognition.
It's about ensuring those stories are not forgotten.
Yeah, and the sources highlight a range of ways this is happening.
Yeah, from physical memorials
Yeah.
to scholarships
Yeah.
to dedicated organizations.
Yeah, like, for example, the African American Civil War Memorial and Museum in D.C.
Oh, a powerful example
A dedicated space.
to commemorate the service of the USCT.
Yeah, educate the public about their role in preserving the Union.
Absolutely. It's a place of remembrance, reflection, and education.
And then we have those scholarship funds,
Right. So important.
like supported by the Black American Veterans Association, the Tuskegee Airmen Scholarship Foundation.
Not just financial assistance, but also a recognition of the importance of education.
Yeah, and nurturing the next generation of leaders.
Exactly. Honoring the past by investing in the future.
And those organizations, too, like the National Museum of African American History and Culture.
Yeah, that's a treasure trove of stories and artifacts.
Nuntford Point Marines Association.
Preserving history, sharing narratives, advocating for recognition.
Yeah, it's all part of amplifying these stories
Exactly, bringing them to the forefront.
that have been marginalized or overlooked.
It's about ensuring a more complete and accurate historical narrative.
Yeah, absolutely. And by acknowledging and honoring these contributions and sacrifices, we ensure these stories continue to inspire, to educate.
And to inform our understanding of American history.
Yeah, that's key.
Yeah.
So as we bring this deep dive to a close,
Yeah, time flies.
what would you say is the most crucial takeaway for our listeners?
The takeaway, I think it's the enduring legacy of Black Americans in the U.S. military.
Yeah.
Their indispensable contributions, their sacrifices
From the nation's earliest days
from the very
to
beginning.
the present.
Their resilience in the face of discrimination,
Yeah.
their impact on military history and the fight for civil rights.
It's all woven into the fabric of the American story.
It's inseparable, really.
Yeah, and for you, the listener, as you reflect on this long and often challenging history,
It's a history worth grappling with.
how might a deeper understanding of these experiences inform your perspective?
Yeah. How does it change your view?
On current conversations, right, surrounding equality, service to our nation, the very meaning of American identity.
Those are big questions.
Big questions.
But they're important ones.
Yeah, they're worth pondering. And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
For this deep dive.
It's been a privilege.
It has.